E.J. Johnson had never truly known anonymity. From the moment he took his first breath, the world seemed to already have a spotlight waiting for him. Being the son of Magic Johnson, one of the most beloved and recognizable figures in sports history, meant E.J.'s life unfolded under the curious gaze of millions. The flashing cameras, the constant media frenzy, the whispers in exclusive rooms. They were as familiar to him as his own heartbeat. On the surface, life was charmed. Private jets, front row seats to NBA games, designer clothes before they even hit the runway. But beneath the sparkle was a quiet ache, a hollow space where a deeper, more personal connection should have lived. Because for all the public displays of love and support, E.J. always sensed something lingering just beneath his father's million-dollar smile. Something unspoken, a tension, subtle but suffocating. He could never fully shake the feeling. It haunted him during glitzy red carpet events, followed him backstage at fashion shows, and echoed even in the most intimate family dinners. Was it disappointment? Shame? Or something even heavier, a regret too large to name? Before we dive deep into this emotional story of truth, healing, and resilience, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more inspiring stories like this one. E.J. was never one to dim his light to make others comfortable. From an early age, he embraced his identity, flamboyant, outspoken, unapologetically himself. His boldness became both his shield and his sword. He walked through the world in head-turning outfits, his laughter loud, his presence undeniable. But behind the fearless exterior was a young man who desperately sought validation from one person: his father, Magic Johnson, the basketball god, the man whose name was synonymous with greatness. On the court, he had dazzled millions with impossible passes and gravity-defying plays. Off the court, his charisma won over presidents, CEOs, and fans across continents. Yet, within the walls of their home, Magic sometimes seemed like a man haunted, not by his victories but by his own humanity. To the public, Magic was a proud father. He stood beside E.J. at events, smiled for the cameras, spoke of love and support. But behind closed doors, the conversations were different. Awkward pauses, conversations that veered around topics instead of through them. Subtle sighs when E.J. showed up wearing something unconventional. E.J. learned to decode those sighs. He knew when his father's silence meant discomfort. He could read the tension in a clenched jaw, the way Magic's eyes sometimes darted away when conversations got too real. Despite it all, E.J. held on to hope. Maybe one day his father would truly see him, not just as the son who carried his last name, but as the person he was, fully and unapologetically. But as years passed, that hope began to fray. There were moments, birthdays, holidays, quiet afternoons, when Magic's distant smile felt like a locked door E.J. didn't have the key to. And what hurt most wasn't the absence of praise, it was the presence of something else, a shadow. A weight in his father's eyes that seemed bigger than disappointment, bigger than misunderstanding. What was it? E.J. couldn't shake the feeling that there was a story here, a truth buried deep within Magic's heart, a truth that, once uncovered, might finally explain the distance, the tension, the unspoken words. What E.J. didn't yet realize was that this truth had very little to do with him, and everything to do with a regret Magic Johnson had carried for decades, one that had shaped not just their relationship, but the man Magic had become. And once that truth came to light, it would change both their lives forever, and inspire millions watching from afar. There was a time when Magic Johnson was invincible. On the basketball court, he danced between defenders with a kind of grace that seemed almost supernatural. He wasn't just a player. He was the embodiment of joy, of excellence, of charisma. The world adored him. But in November 1991, that invincibility shattered. When Magic stood in front of the cameras to announce that he was HIV positive, the world gasped. Fans cried. Reporters scrambled. And Magic, for the first time, wasn't smiling. Beneath the brave words was a man grappling with mortality, with stigma, with the terrifying unknown. But what the world didn't see that day was the private cost. The fear that crept into his home, the way it shaped his relationships, including the one with his son. As EJ grew, his vibrant spirit was impossible to ignore. While other little boys reached for basketballs, EJ reached for fabric, makeup, and anything that shimmered. Magic loved his son deeply. But love, he learned, wasn't always simple. It came tangled with fear, not of who EJ was, but of how the world would treat someone like him. At first, Magic convinced himself that this was just a phase, a passing moment of exploration. But as EJ got older, his flamboyance became a declaration, not an experiment. And with every high heel, every glittering accessory, every confident step EJ took into his truth, Magic felt something tighten inside him. Not out of hate, but out of terror. Terror that the world wouldn't be kind. Terror that his own ignorance might hurt his son in ways he couldn't yet predict. And maybe, if he was being completely honest, terror that he wouldn't know how to love his son the way EJ deserved. This tension simmered quietly for years. There were good days, laughter, hugs, family vacations. But the undertow of discomfort never fully disappeared. One evening, it all came dangerously close to boiling over, a family dinner at their Beverly Hills home. EJ had arrived in a head-to-toe designer look, sharp, daring, and unapologetically feminine. Conversation flowed until it didn't. A relative made a careless comment, something about boys dressing like girls. The air grew thick. Magic shifted uncomfortably, offering no defense. Cookie, always the peacemaker, tried to change the subject. But EJ noticed the way his father avoided his gaze, the way his smile faded just a fraction too soon. It was a small betrayal, but it cut deep. Later that night, long after the plates were cleared and laughter had faded into awkward silence, EJ sat in his room replaying every glance, every sigh, every word left unsaid. A familiar ache settled in his chest. He had long accepted himself, but what was acceptance worth if it didn't come from the people who mattered most? Then, as he walked toward the kitchen for water, he paused. Voices drifted down the hallway. His parents. He shouldn't have listened. But how could he not? Cookie's voice, calm but firm. "You can't keep doing this, Irvin." He sees it. He feels it. Magic's reply was quieter, strained. I never imagined this. I don't know how to handle it. And I hate that. I hate that I might be failing him." Cookie again, softer now. "You're not failing because of who he is. You're failing because you won't face yourself." EJ's breath caught. What did that mean? What was his father really struggling with? Was this about him? Or was this about something deeper? Something broken inside Magic himself? The question burned in EJ's mind long into the night. Something was being hidden, something big. And if he ever wanted to truly understand his father, and maybe even heal their relationship, it was time to stop waiting for answers. It was time to demand them. The next morning, EJ woke with a clarity he hadn't felt in years. He was done guessing, done tiptoeing around discomfort. The years of silent tension, the masked smiles, the awkward conversations, they all led to this moment. It was time to confront the man behind the legend. Not Magic Johnson, the icon, but Irvin, his father. He found Magic sitting alone in the backyard, sipping coffee, staring into nothing. The morning sun bounced off the pool, casting ripples of light across his father's face. For a brief moment, EJ hesitated, but then the fire inside reignited. "Dad," EJ started, his voice steady but sharp. "We need to talk." Magic glanced up, startled at first, then braced himself. He knew this moment had been coming. "What's on your mind, son?" he asked, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. EJ sat down, folding his arms. "I heard you and Mom last night." His eyes locked onto his father's. "And I'm done pretending this tension between us doesn't exist." Magic sighed, setting his coffee down. "EJ, it's complicated." "No," EJ interrupted, his tone firm. "It's not. It's only complicated because you've made it that way. All my life I've felt like there's a part of you that's ashamed, or disappointed, or—" His voice cracked for a moment, but recovered. "Or maybe afraid." Magic's shoulders tensed. He rubbed his hands together, looking down at the ground. "You think I'm ashamed of you?" "I don't know," EJ snapped. Sometimes it feels like it. And if you're not, then why does it always feel like there's something you're holding back? Like there's something you regret, something about me? Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. Then, slowly, Magic looked up. His eyes weren't defiant, they weren't angry. They were broken, tired. EJ, my biggest regret in this world, it's not about who you are, it's about who I was. EJ blinked. What does that even mean? Magic swallowed hard. His voice softened. When you were little, when I first realized you weren't like other boys, I panicked. I didn't know what to do. I was raised in a world where men were supposed to be a certain way. Tough, stoic, straight. That's what was drilled into me. By my father, by the streets, by the NBA locker rooms, and when I saw you. Vibrant, fabulous, unapologetic. I was scared. Scared of what? EJ pressed. Scared of how the world would treat you, Magic admitted. But if I'm honest, scared of what it said about me, about whether I had failed you somehow, or whether I could handle being the father you needed. He paused, his voice trembling. And instead of rising to meet that fear, I hid. I smiled in public. Took the photos, said the right things. But inside I was fighting a battle between who I was raised to be and who I needed to become for you. For the first time in his life, EJ saw something he had never seen before. Tears welling in his father's eyes. Not performative tears, not media-friendly emotion, but raw, soul-bearing sorrow. I regret, Magic continued, that I let my own ignorance and fear make you feel anything less than completely loved. I regret every time my silence hurt you. I regret every second I made you doubt your worth. EJ's throat tightened. He'd imagined confrontations like this 1,000 times, yelling, screaming, accusations. But he hadn't imagined this, the quiet devastation of hearing his father admit his deepest failure. But beneath the pain, something else stirred. Relief, understanding, and, slowly, the beginning of forgiveness. I never needed you to be perfect, EJ whispered. I just needed you to show up, fully, for me. Magic nodded, wiping his face. Then let's start now. No more hiding. No more regret. And in that moment, for the first time, father and son truly saw each other. The days that followed were unlike anything either of them had experienced before. The walls that had quietly stood between father and son for years were finally crumbling. And with every honest conversation, every shared moment, something beautiful began to rebuild. For the first time, Magic wasn't just asking about EJ's life in passing. He was genuinely listening. He wanted to understand the world EJ had crafted for himself. The fashion shows, the creative communities, the vibrant, unapologetic spaces where being different wasn't just accepted, it was celebrated. One afternoon they sat together scrolling through EJ's favorite designers. Magic laughed as EJ explained runway trends and why gendered clothing was frankly outdated. You mean to tell me that's called a peplum? Magic chuckled, shaking his head. Yeah, Dad, EJ grinned, and honestly you could pull it off. Magic threw his head back and laughed. Let's not get carried away now. But beneath the jokes was something far more profound. Curiosity replacing fear. Connection replacing avoidance. In parallel, Magic was also doing his own internal work. Quiet hours spent reading, watching documentaries, talking to LGBTQ+ advocates. He realized that much of his discomfort had come from ignorance, not malice, but unchallenged assumptions passed down through generations. One evening, Magic turned to Cookie after reading a particularly moving memoir. I wasted so many years afraid, he confessed. Afraid of losing respect. Afraid of what people would say. But what's respect worth if you lose your own child? Cookie smiled softly, squeezing his hand. You didn't lose him. You just had to find your way back. The private healing soon turned public. Magic agreed to a candid interview, not a polished, rehearsed PR appearance, but a raw, open conversation about fatherhood, mistakes, and transformation. Sitting under studio lights, the interviewer asked, Magic, What would you say to fathers struggling to accept their LGBTQ+ children? Magic didn't hesitate. I'd say, look at yourself first. Ask why you're struggling. Is it about them? Or is it about the stories you were told about what's right or normal? Because those stories, they're lies. The truth is, your only job as a parent is to love your child. Fully, out loud, unconditionally. The clip went viral within hours. Headlines read, "Magic Johnson gets real about fatherhood and acceptance." Social media flooded with comments, parents thanking him for saying what they were too afraid to admit. Young people sharing how seeing someone like Magic embrace his child gave them hope for their own families. At the same time, EJ began telling his side of the story, not in bitterness but in power. He appeared on talk shows, podcasts, and magazine covers, not as a victim of a famous father's failures, but as a beacon for anyone navigating the complexities of identity and family. "There's this idea," EJ told one interviewer, "that love is supposed to be easy, but sometimes it isn't. Sometimes love has to be chosen, fought for, built. My dad and we had to learn how to love each other the way we both needed. And that's okay, because the love we have now, it's stronger for it." Together, Magic and EJ became something bigger than themselves, a symbol of how healing is messy, imperfect, but always possible. They stood on stages together. They mentored other families. They showed the world that while regret may linger in the past, it doesn't have to define the future. Because love, real love, isn't just about accepting someone, it's about celebrating them. In the months that followed, the change within the Johnson family became undeniable. Where there had once been tension, there was now warmth. Where silence used to fill the gaps, there was laughter, honest conversation, and an ease that hadn't existed for years. Family gatherings transformed. No more carefully chosen words or avoiding uncomfortable topics. Instead, they were filled with open arms, shared stories, and genuine pride. Magic beamed as he bragged about EJ's latest fashion ventures just as loudly as he once celebrated a triple-double on the court, and the world noticed. News outlets ran follow-up features on the Johnsons, not as a story of scandal or controversy, but as a blueprint for healing, growth, and acceptance. And headlines read, "From NBA legend to proud father, Magic and EJ Johnson's journey inspires millions." Letters began arriving from all over the world. Parents wrote to say that after watching their story, they picked up the phone and called children they hadn't spoken to in years. Young people shared how for the first time they felt seen. Families who had quietly fractured under the weight of misunderstanding found the courage to start again. One message read simply, "Because of you two, I have hope for my family." At an LGBTQ+ charity gala, Magic stood next to EJ on stage. Looking out at the crowd, he took a deep breath and said, "I spent too long thinking about how the world would see me as a father. But the truth is, it doesn't matter what the world thinks. What matters is that my son knows without a shadow of a doubt that I love him exactly as he is." The applause was thunderous, but even louder than the claps was the quiet transformation happening in living rooms, at dinner tables, and in hearts across the globe. For EJ, the journey wasn't just about reconciliation with his father. It was about realizing that he never needed to change to earn love. He had always been enough. What changed was the willingness of others, including his father, to open their eyes and their hearts. Sitting on his balcony one evening, EJ reflected on everything that had unfolded. The years of pain, confusion, and longing now felt like pieces of a puzzle that had finally clicked into place. He had once spent so much time craving his father's approval, chasing a version of love that always seemed just out of reach. But now it wasn't about approval. It was about mutual respect, mutual understanding, and a love that, while imperfect, was real. As the sun dipped below the Los Angeles skyline, EJ smiled. He knew that their story wasn't just theirs anymore. It belonged to anyone who had ever felt misunderstood, anyone who had ever struggled to bridge the gap between generations, between identities, between fear and love. And perhaps that was the greatest gift of all. knowing that their healing wasn't just personal, it was a light guiding others home. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And check out the video on your screen right now. Another powerful story of resilience and transformation you won't want to miss.